Florida, Sarasota area, I believe, dies after being hypnotized by the principal. Other kids apparently have been injured or
Two,
fallen
two committed suicide related to it. One died in a car accident. And those were, the parents. What we just saw in the news. If I can just jump in, is that this happened back in, I believe, 2011.
Yes.
The case was settled with the state in 2012, which had nothing to do with their death. It was just the improper practice of hypnosis by the principal, and then there was a civil wrongful death suit that the three sets of parents won against the school board just last week. So that's why it's back in the news.
And they claim that they're not doing it for the money. So if you're not doing it for the money, I guess they're going to give it to charity. For instance, to help people go to college or something like that. Because that's what I would do. I would not want to profit on the death of a child. So I imagine that's their good intention right there. We'll soon find out, won't we? But my concern is, well, first, as you mentioned, why was the principal hypnotizing these children? I have nothing against hypnosis. We're going to get into hypnosis, but is this something a principal should be doing in the school setting? I truly don't know. Has it happened before somewhere else in the United States?
It probably has. When I first learned about it 3 years ago, I thought it was a little unusual. It doesn't mean, I don't want to speak too much about what the principal, George Kenny, did or did not do. Legally, that was proper.
No, I'm not going to get into legality.
But in terms, as far as I know, he was a trained hypnotist at some point. I don't know whether he kept up with it. I mean, clearly it was not his primary work like it is for me and Sheena. And the Miami Hypnosis Center, that's all we do all the time. So that's our profession, and we're experts in that. We've been doing it combined for 26 years or something, 27 years. So the point is, that's very different from a principal who does it a little bit here and there. It doesn't mean that he wasn't good at what he did, but I don't want to speak to that because I have no idea how effective what he was intending to do, which was improving sports, improving confidence, improving test scores,
test
and it's useful for all those things.
Here's my concern.
Which is not clinical.
Right.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not clinical. I agree 100%. As a matter of fact, we know the Zen master in basketball, and people do meditation. People practice these relaxation techniques to hone in on their skills. There's nothing wrong with that, and there indeed isn't any clinical component to it. But here's something. I need to play devil's advocate.
It seems like a conflict of interest.
It is one, and two, and maybe he's not charging. He's just doing it out of the kindness of his heart. But here's my main concern. Were parents aware?
Yes, at least according to the statement.
Okay.
The parents had given him permission to work with the students. So the parents had basically allowed it.
Okay.
So they were aware.
Right, and any time, even when we work with a minor, we
always
always have to have the parent.
We always need consent.
Clearly, the parent has to sign off and say this is fine.
Well, but we've heard quirky things. That teachers tutor kids in inappropriate ways, and things happen. So I was wondering, did this guy venture out? Because I don't know the details of whether
I can't speak to that.
Whether he ventured out. But apparently, Sheena's sharing with us
Yes,
that
actually, according to
parents,
there was a 134-page report, and according to that report, the parents gave permission to the principal to work with their children.
So it's a pretty clear-cut issue. There's really nothing was done wrong. Because, quite frankly, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think hypnosis is what led to their suicide. Perhaps
that's a completely separate issue. The issue that he was brought up on charges for in 2012 was practicing as a non-licensed or practicing therapeutic hypnosis without a license, and without bogging down the show with the minutia of the statute in Florida, which I'm fairly well acquainted with. There's a definition of hypnotism and a restriction on therapeutic hypnosis, which is the definition of which is subject to the dictionary and all that, to licensed mental health professionals and practitioners of the medical healing arts, doctors, chiropractors, dentists, and so forth. So then the question is, what is therapeutic hypnosis? That's a topic for a different conversation, but that's the only issue as a misdemeanor charge based on the statute that he was brought up on. Had nothing to do with whatever happened to them. The only reason why he was even brought on charges is because there was a media blow up because kids died and it was related and they were hypnotized. If nothing ever bad happened to him, no one would have come after him. The state only had an issue to enforce the statute. That what just happened last week was a civil suit based on wrongful death because the parents, admittedly in their grief, of course, were probably very upset, and in probably their ignorance about what hypnotism can do, thought that that's what led to their kid's death, which I believe is preposterous, but nonetheless, I have sympathy for them, but that's what that suit was about.
Right. And you have to remember, Todd, that they also alleged that he was using therapeutic hypnosis. But us, that we work with hypnosis and we're very clear on what therapeutic is versus just regular hypnosis, test anxiety, sports performance, focus, concentration, that is not termed by therapeutic hypnosis.
Basically, therapy means, or therapeutic means, relating to the curing or healing of a disease or disorder or a human
imbalance.
An imbalance.
Right. So, really,
mental,
most issues that people deal with, even, overeating, even if they're stressed out, whatever that might be, or a fear of flying, that's not a disorder or a disease. And even if you could say that it is, because someone could define it that way, we're not curing or healing. That can only be done by the
We're not even treating.
Themselves. We're not treating.
We actually work with these individuals.
So what you're giving,
don't treat
you're
them.
giving them the opportunity to acquire new tools to face their challenges more than anything.
It's a form of motivational coaching using individualized hypnotic techniques and helping people tap into a more empowering part of their mind and to get cooperation with their mind instead of fighting it. That's where.
So when this gentleman Robbins does his motivational speeches and he puts people to walk on embers, basically he's not curing them of anything. He's just hyping them up to the point where they can do this and not be afraid. And I'm not saying hypnosis is a hype show like Mr. Robbins, with all due respect, but it is interesting that they are trying to commingle therapy with the hypnosis component. Something I want to touch real quick when we come back. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but there's several things that seem rather clear, and I think they kind of railroaded the principle for financial gain. That's one. And two, perhaps next time we should have a lawyer here to discuss these things. It could be interesting.
Yeah, sure.
So stay with us. A lot more on the other side of the break.